Now, this should be a pretty short one because nervous tissue and muscle tissue, we're just going to cover the basics now, just because we can have lots of chapters towards, in the mid part of our semester, kind of discuss the nervous tissue and muscular tissue. So we're just going to cover it maybe 15 minutes here, right? And that's about it. So when we look at nervous tissue and muscle tissue, they're both excitable, meaning that you can turn the muscle on, you can turn the muscle off. You can turn the neuron on, you can turn them off, right? So that's the thing with the excitability. We have a way of somehow flipping the switch. And as we flip the switch, we can excite the cell and turn that cell on. And just as importantly, we need to be able to turn that cell off. Now, in order to do that, we need to have some kind of charge difference. We call that charge difference a membrane potential, right? So when a membrane potential is an electrical charge difference that occurs across a plasma membrane and is a basis for their excitation right here. Now, inside the cell is slightly negative at rest. We call that polarize. When we want to turn it on, we're going to depolarize the cell, exciting the cell. This allows us to respond quickly to stimulus, whether outside or inside, by then causing changes in the membrane potential. Nerves and muscle cells undergo this kind of excitability. Nerves do this so they can transmit action potentials to other cells. Once muscles are excited, they're going to shorten and contract. Now, nervous tissue kind of looks like this, right? The nervous tissue, the most functional part of the nervous tissue are the neurons or nerve cells. These are functional ones. They're not the only cells of the brain. They're not the only cells of your nerve or nervous tissue. We have lots of what we call neuroglial cells that we'll talk about later. Some of them are very important. Some of them are going to make sure you have a blood-brain barrier and we can protect the brain from infections. Now, with the functional part, though, you can have as many of these neuroglial cells, and there's about 100-to-1 ratio of the neuroglial cells to neurons, right? Without the neurons, the brain doesn't work. So, yeah, neuroglial cells important, but not as important as the neurons. The neurons give it function. So in a neuron, we see that you have a large cell body that we call a neurosoma or just soma. That's where the nucleus is. That's where the rough endoplasmic reticulum is found. That's where the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is found. In other words, all of the necessary machinery that allows a cell, any cell to live, nucleus, rough ER, smooth ER, all of that machinery that allows a cell to grow, to repair itself. That's all found in the neurosoma. So if you have damage of the neurosoma, there's no recovery of that neuron possible. Now, the neurosoma, or just a soma, cell body, continues down as a very long axon. That axon is going to then make contact with other neurons that helps form a pathway. All right, a neuron by itself is kind of useless. What a neuron does that makes it important is that neurons are connected to other neurons as part of the pathway, right? As you activate one in a neuron, you can activate the pathway and then you can recall a memory. You can have certain type of emotions triggered by that memory as well. So again, neuron by itself, useless. It has to be part of a pathway. So as part of the pathway, it needs to have axon that connects it to other neurons. It has dendrites that allows it to receive information from previous neurons that are part of the pathway. So these you have multiple dendrites and only one main axon. Their main job with the neurons is to detect some kind of stimuli, respond quickly, and then transmit that information to other cells. Again, we kind of talked about what the soma is over here, so just review it. Dendrites, right? Multiple short branch, they receive signals from other cells as part of the pathway. They transmit the action potential then to the cell body or neurosoma, and then eventually if there's enough stimulus, we're going to then trigger another action potential from this axon, right, from this neuron down its axon, so then we can complete the circuit as part of our pathway. Muscle tissue. And again, we'll talk a lot more about these coming up. Muscle tissue, elongated cells that are specialized to contract in response to any kind of stimulation. So with muscle tissue, when they contract, they shorten, right? Doesn't matter, where they're found. Their main job of muscle tissue is to shorten. Now, they create movements involved in body and limb movement, movements in the GI tract, allowing us to move foods from one region to the next, to even have waste elimination. They allow us to have breathing, speech, and of course, right, in the heart and the cardiovascular system, blood circulation. The muscle tissue is going to produce body heat as a byproduct of the muscle contraction. Sometimes when you are cold, right, you will also produce body heat from shivering. And the sole purpose of that is just to increase your body heat. So you probably heard of this saying that by the time you start shivering, you're already hypothermic and your body temperature is already low. That's actually true. Your body hates to waste energy. So the only time you waste energy from an uncontrolled muscle contraction is to produce body heat when you already have low body temperature. Again, we're going to talk about all three types. They're going to have separate chapters by themselves coming up. Right? We have three main types of muscle tissue: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. Skeletal muscle, what do we need to know? Right? Know what they look like for the lab practical. Know what they do here. Skeletal muscles, long thread-like muscle fibers, most attached to bone. Some will attach to other muscles. Some will attach to the skin, right? Some will attach to parts of the tongue, right? Some will attach to the skin, like we see in the facial muscles. Contains multiple nuclei. So these are all nuclei from this one muscle cell. Here's another muscle cell up here, and it's got lots of nucleus. Striations are due to the names we give the light dark banding, and it's due to the order, the arrangement of different proteins inside the muscle tissue. Skeletal muscles are voluntary under conscious control. So you control when you take a step, when you want to work out. All right. So this is what we mean by voluntary control. Now, the other type of muscle, cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle is also striated, but the big thing is communication. Cardiac muscle is limited to the heart, and we need communication in the cardiac muscle. Because if we don't have communication, then we have an arrhythmia. And if we have an arrhythmia, then we have major issues. All right. So the cardiac muscles, striated, they're shorter. All right. So here's one muscle cell right here. This is one cardiac muscle cell. They're branched, so then it makes contact to other muscle cells. Here's another muscle cell that is making contact to. At the muscle branch points, you see these black lines right here. Those black lines are called intercalated disc. They provide communication. So then when I want this cell to activate, this muscle cell is going to undergo depolarization. It's going to carry ions to all the other cells it's connected to. Those ions, like calcium and sodium, is going to move through these intercalated discs where there are gap junctions found there, so then I can stimulate the other cells, right? So think of this as like a domino effect. You activate one cells right here. As this cell activates, right, you have a nerve impulse that goes through. Then that nerve impulse gets carried to all these other cells that it's connected to. So now that one cell you activate it is going to make contact with 3, 4 other cells. So now we have this domino effect where we activate one cell, and instead of just one cell activating, yeah, we activated that one, but all the other ones it's connected to activates as well in sequence. So then we have communication and we have control. Now, they're striated and involuntary. The last type, smooth muscle, they lack striations and is involuntary. Now, where we see both of these skeletal and cardiac muscles, both of them are striated, meaning that they have actin and myosin proteins inside, and they're arranged in very similar ways to give us this light dark appearance. Well, in smooth muscle, we also see actin and myosin, but the arrangement is different. Because the arrangement is different, they don't have striations. It's also involuntary. And it kind of makes sense why, right? In muscle tissue, we're going to be contracting these muscle tissues for hours at a time. So smooth muscle is going to be found in your gut. And we'll be contracting those muscles for hours and hours as we start moving food along our digestive tract. You don't want to have the control over that for hours and hours, right? So visceral muscle forms layers of digestive, respiratory, and urinary tracts, and you need to hold them and you need to contract them for hours. So there's no way you can do that. You don't want it to be voluntary at that point, right? And the rest of this is not going to be something I ask about. So that would be it for chapter 5.